You can hide your thoughts. You can practice speaking, study the right intonation, rehearse responses. You can even shape your appearance, create a character, dress up a persona for the world to see. Tiny expressions, almost invisible, but loaded with psychic truth. Little leaks of what Jung called the unconscious, the other in you, which you don't control, but which is always acting. Carl Jung said, "That which does not come to consciousness returns as destiny." But perhaps that fate is written in your stiff neck, in your held breath, in your trembling hands. Most people think of body language as a tool of seduction or power. But the truth is deeper. Body language is the silent battlefield between the ego and the unconscious. It is the stage where the shadow manifests, where complexes emerge, where the soul whispers truths that the mind lies about. You're nervous, but you say you're fine. Your body, however, hunches your shoulders, lowers your voice, closes your mouth. You try to appear calm, but you touch your suprasternal notch, that vulnerable spot at the base of your neck, an evolutionary legacy from when we needed to protect ourselves from predators. You feign self-confidence, but your hands are hidden, your thumbs tucked in, and your feet point discreetly toward the door. Your body, at this moment, is screaming what your ego doesn't want anyone to hear. I'm scared. I don't belong here. I'm trying to look like someone I'm not. This is not acting. This is depth psychology. Jung did not speak of body language as a superficial tool. For him, the body was a reflection of the self, the organizing center of the psyche, and every unintentional movement was a message from the unconscious trying to express itself, trying to break the ego's monopoly on its image in the world. Have you ever noticed how a baby, still without language, communicates everything through his body? Hunger, pain, fear, joy. The body is the first language we learn. And perhaps, for that very reason, it is the most authentic. But over time, we learn to hide, to build personas, to master our appearance, and the more polished our image becomes, the more repressed our truth becomes. And the repressed truth becomes a symptom, not only psychological, but physical. Insomnia, gastritis, bruxism, pain without medical cause. Or worse, a chronically false expression on the face, an eternally defensive posture, a body that never relaxes because it is at war with itself. The body reveals. It shows what is disintegrated within. It is the stage where the unconscious is performed. And if you learn to read your own body and the bodies of others, you'll start to notice what's behind the words. You'll see where someone is being truthful or where they're just covering themselves up with a mask. You'll notice that before they say yes, their lips are drawn back. That before they say, "I'm fine," their shoulders are hunched over. Body language is the non-verbal revelation of the psyche. It is how the unconscious learns to express itself when the conscious refuses to listen. And the question Jung would ask today would not just be, "What are you feeling?" but, "What is your body telling you that your mind hasn't understood yet?" A persona and micro-gestures. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like you were seeing yourself, but not recognizing yourself? The face was yours, the voice too. But there was something about it that felt like a role-playing, as if you were trying to convince the world and yourself that you were that person, confident, sociable, in control. Carl Jung called this person the social mask we use to function in the world. The persona is not in itself a bad thing. It is necessary. It is what allows us to navigate social contexts, build public identities, and protect internal weaknesses. The problem begins when we forget that it is a mask, and we begin to confuse it with who we really are. It is at this point that the microgestos become revelations. While the persona tries to maintain a coherent image, confident, polished, in control, the body operates on another level. The body's unconscious. And that's where the little leaks begin. You say you're comfortable, but your eyes blink more than usual. You claim to be at peace, but you cross your arms tightly and tuck your chin back. You compliment someone, but at the end of the sentence, you close your lips as if you were swallowing what you really wanted to say. These are the bodily slips of the tongue. They are the language of the shadow trying to penetrate the mask of the persona. Jung warned us, everything we pretend to be becomes in time a hiding place for what we really are. And the body, with its silent memory, begins to denounce this internal abyss. The eyebrow that twitches when we hear something that bothers us, the lip that disappears when we repress anger, the sudden touch on the neck, our archetypal zone of vulnerability, when we feel like we're not good enough. These gestures are not random. They are ancestral remnants. These are signs that come from before language, from a time when survival depended on understanding intentions without needing words. And no matter how modern the persona you wear is, it does not cancel the codes of your biological unconscious. Now, think about how many times you've passed someone on the street, glanced briefly, and felt something strange. There was nothing objectively threatening, but the person's body, their expression, their posture, something there activated his internal warning system. It is your unconscious reading the unconscious of the other. It is the self perceiving the falseness of the other's persona, even without knowing how to explain it. This happens to you too. When you walk into a room trying to look like something you don't feel, your body protests. He hardens. He denies. He exudes the truth you would like to hide. And this conflict between what you feel and what you want to appear to be creates internal noise. It generates anxiety, insecurity, insomnia. Not because you are weak, but because you are trying to inhabit an image that was not born from your essence. The persona is a tool, but when it becomes a uniform, it suffocates. And micro-gestures are the cry of the unconscious saying, "This mask no longer fits me." This is why the process of individuation, the central path in Jung's psychology, involves the dissolution of false identifications with the persona. Not so that you live without a mask, but so that it becomes transparent to the true self. The key is listening, observing small gestures, yours and those of others, as if reading fragments of a greater truth, not to judge, but to integrate. Because every time you ignore your own signals, you're not just lying to the world, you lie to yourself. And the body will continue to reveal what the mind insists on hiding. The shadow and compensatory behaviors. Have you ever noticed how, in certain moments of tension, your body makes decisions for you? Without thinking, you cross your arms, bite your lip, scratch the back of your neck, or adjust your clothes. Not because you have to, but because something inside you needs to protect yourself. These are automatic, involuntary gestures. And no matter how rehearsed your speech is, or how polished your persona is, these movements escape. Like ghosts of the unconscious that refuse to remain hidden. Carl Jung called it shadow everything we reject within ourselves. The denied feelings, the unacceptable desires, the repressed pains. But what few realize is that the shadow does not only manifest itself in explosive attitudes or dark impulses, it is often expressed in small behaviors, compensatory, desperate attempts by the ego to hide what it refuses to feel. The man who boasts of his courage and lives in fear of being seen as weak. The woman who displays exaggerated self-confidence while dealing with fragile and silenced self-esteem. The leader who imposes authority aggressively because he cannot stand being questioned. These attitudes are not authenticity. They are secondary masks created to hide the shadow. These are compensatory reactions, like poorly placed bandages over open wounds, and the body delivers each one of them. The voice that rises in tone, trying to hide the insecurity. Shoulders that bulge too much, as if they wanted to occupy a space not conquered by merit, but by fear. The agitated hands that simulate enthusiasm, but only reveal anxiety. These behaviors arise when the ego tries to suffocate the shadow with too much light. But as Jung stated, the shadow only grows denser when ignored. In moments of exposure, judgment, or challenge, the unconscious understands the context as a symbolic threat. And that's where the body seeks defense, not against an actual predator, but against the possibility of being seen for who we really are. The gesture of touching the neck, for example, so common when we feel vulnerable, is an ancestral reflex of self-protection. When the unconscious feels attacked, it activates physical responses inherited from evolution: hiding the throat, bending the torso, retracting the lips. Behind every micro-defense of the body, there is a cry from the shadow: "Don't see me. Don't find me out. Do not reveal my pain." And the paradox is brutal. The more we try to appear strong, the more we reveal our weaknesses. The more we avoid the shadow, the more we become hostage to it. True strength is not in projecting invulnerability. It's about recognizing your own blind spots, in admitting that there is fear, shame, inadequacy, and yet choosing to walk with it. Because the process of individuation, the Jungian path to wholeness, only begins when we stop running from ourselves. The shadow, when welcomed, does not weaken us. It humanizes us. And when we begin to look honestly at our compensatory behaviors, we realize that the body was never the enemy. It was always a messenger. The trembling of the hands, the involuntary frowning of the forehead, the clenching of the jaw. These are pleas from the unconscious for the ego to stop pretending and finally start to integrate. Because while you struggle to appear to be what you are not, you distance yourself from what you could become. Synchrony, rapport, and projection. Have you ever stood in front of someone and felt that something inexplicable connected you? It wasn't the content of the conversation, nor the subject. It was something more subtle: a mirrored gesture, an involuntary smile, a simultaneous tilt of the head. It was as if, for a moment, you belonged to the same emotional frequency. This phenomenon has a name: synchrony, and it doesn't happen in the mind, it happens in the body. Carl Jung believed that there are forces within us that predate language and concepts, forces that not only shape what we feel, but also how we behave toward others. When two unconscious beings align, the bodies speak an invisible language. Gestures meet. The rhythm becomes more refined. And there is born what psychology calls rapport, a silent bridge where the bond is established effortlessly. But what is this bridge? Jung would say it is the self in search of recognition. The deepest part of us, often hidden by social masks, roles, insecurities, recognizes something familiar in the other, not necessarily because the other is like us, but because he triggers something unconscious, perhaps archetypal. At the physiological level, this synchrony happens before consciousness even realizes it. You cross your arms, and the other person does the same. You touch your face, he does too. These automatic reflexes are not simple imitations. They are the body's attempts to align itself, to say, "You are safe. I can adapt to you." And the most fascinating thing is that this synchrony does not depend on verbal language. It can occur between two strangers, between mother and baby, between therapist and patient. It is a silent dialogue where bodily harmony reveals a bond that the mind has not yet understood. But not all synchrony is true. Sometimes what we feel as connection is actually projection, a trick of the unconscious, an internal theater that we use to deal with aspects of ourselves that we cannot recognize. Jung said that we project our light and our shadow. In other words, we both idealize and demonize the other, not for what they really are, but for what they represent in our internal world. And this is revealed in the body as well. Do you feel an immediate dislike for someone? Perhaps they unconsciously remind you of parts of yourself that you reject. Are you enchanted by someone at first sight? Perhaps he or she is embodying an archetype of yours, such as the savior, the soulmate, or the master. The intensity of the feeling is rarely related to the other person. It is related to the unconscious burden we place on it. And projection has physical effects. It changes the tone of voice, posture, the way we look, the way we approach or retreat. You can try to appear neutral, but the body always gives it away. A touch that lasts longer than normal, an exaggerated laugh, a hidden tension. Synchrony, in this case, is only superficial. It is driven not by recognition of the other, but by the unconscious desire for him to confirm to us something we want or fear to see. This is why relationships based on projections are so intense and so fragile, because we are not relating to a person. We are relating to an internal symbol, a reflection of that which we have not yet integrated within ourselves. Jung warned, the more unconscious your projection, the more it will dominate your life, and you will call it destiny. So how do we know if we are in authentic sync, or just stuck in a projection? The answer is in the body, in the authenticity of gestures, in the freedom of breathing, in the absence of disguised tension. When there is truth, the body relaxes, the gaze softens, gestures flow. When there is projection, there is rigidity, even if camouflaged by smiles. There is an unspoken effort, an attempt to preserve the illusion. Self-knowledge begins when we learn to listen to these signals, because deep down, the body is not just reacting to the other. He is revealing how we relate to the most hidden parts of ourselves. And this deep listening, this attention to bodily signals, to what attracts or repels us for no clear reason, is the first step to disarming projections and building true relationships. Because we can only truly connect with others when we stop projecting onto him what we refuse to see in ourselves. See confidence, posture, and the individuation process. Confidence doesn't start in the mind. It starts in the body. Before you say a single word, you are already communicating. Your posture reveals more about who you are, or who you try to appear to be, than any rehearsed speech. And that's not a detail, that's the essence. Carl Jung did not see the body as a mere vehicle of the soul, but as a living expression of the unconscious. For him, the body is where psychic truths are condensed into form and gesture, and few truths are as defining as our sense of self, and how much we trust it. Watch someone who feels small, hunched shoulders, hesitant gaze, restless hands. No matter how much he tries to appear confident, his body betrays his performance. Similarly, look at someone with inflated but fragile self-esteem, forced posture, amplified gestures, a look that seeks validation with each sentence. This trust is not real, it's defensive, it is compensatory. According to Jung, much of our suffering comes from trying to be what we are not, of adapting to external models, social expectations, other people's idealizations, while, inside, we feel disconnected from ourselves. And this creates a noise. The body wants to express the truth, but the mind insists on wearing masks. This conflict manifests itself in what we call psychic postural misalignment. The body goes one way, the soul goes another, and we feel this as exhaustion, anxiety, stiffness, as if we were living inside a suit of armor that was too tight. Healing begins when we shed the armor, when we stop performing trust and start inhabiting it. But how do you do that? Jung offers us a profound answer by the process of individuation. That is, through the path of integration between persona, shadow, anima, animus, and self. A path of reconciliation between what we are, what we seem to be, and what we still do not dare to be. And the body actively participates in this. When we begin to accept our weaknesses, the body relaxes. When we stop pretending, posture finds its natural form. When we integrate the shadow, the gesture becomes more complete, less tense. True trust does not come from external domination, but from internal reconciliation. and it has an unmistakable physical signature: stable presence, fluid breathing, firm but receptive gaze. This confidence doesn't scream. It doesn't need to prove anything. It manifests itself in the way someone enters a room, how they occupy their space, how they maintain silence without shrinking. It is a confidence that does not come from the ego, but from the self. And the self, for Jung, is the regulatory center of psychic totality. It is the part of us that is already whole, even when we are still fragmented. He doesn't demand perfection, just authenticity. That's why the most confident gestures are often the simplest. Tilt your head slightly to listen. Breathe calmly as you respond, taking your own position without becoming hardened against the other. These attitudes are not learned from power manuals. They emerge when we feel at peace with who we are. The body then ceases to be a battlefield and becomes one field of individuation. Each gesture begins to express integration. Each posture reveals internal alignment. And trust stops being armor and becomes skin, something we don't wear, but inhabit. In the end, the process of individuation is not just a psychological dive. It is also a bodily reunion. Because only when we return to fully inhabit our own bodies, with truth and wholeness, can we truly become who we have always been. Negotiation as an archetypal battle. Every negotiation is a battle, but not necessarily against the other. The real tension occurs within us. When Jung wrote about archetypes, he was not just offering mythological images for the psyche. I was describing deep, universal patterns that are activated in crucial situations. And few situations are as archetypal as a negotiation. Why? Because negotiating is, in essence, confronting desire. The desire of the other and ours. It is a clash between wills, a dance between concession and power. It is the moment when the persona tries to maintain control, the shadow threatens to emerge, and the self watches silently, waiting for integration. Imagine a classic scenario. You walk into a meeting. You feel the tension in the air. Your body reacts first. Stiff posture, cold hands, racing heart. You try to appear calm, but inside you are torn, and the hero that you want to conquer, and the wise who wants to maintain lucidity, and the innocent who fears confrontation, and the shadow that whispers, "You will lose." Trading activates all of them, and that's why it's so dangerous and so revealing. Jung would say that this moment is not just transactional. It is a symbolic field where forces much older than us manifest themselves. That's why we feel that something bigger is at stake. It's not just a contract, a salary, an agreement. It's ours value that is on the agenda. It's our place in the world that is being disputed. And the body, once again, reveals everything. Whoever enters the room with their shoulders hunched has already lost part of the war. Those who talk too much are trying to fill the silence they fear. Anyone who avoids looking is giving in before they are even pressured. But what if negotiation were not a war against the other, but rather a right of individuation? Think of it like this. Negotiating is confronting what you believe you deserve. It is giving concrete form to your sense of dignity. It's putting your worldview to the test against the worldview of others. And this activates powerful archetypes. The king in you seeks to establish territory and order. The warrior seeks to win. The curator tries to preserve ties. And the cheater, yes, he too, whispers shortcuts to win through deception. Every decision you make during a negotiation reveals which archetype is in charge. Do you impose? Do you give in? Do you manipulate? Do you remain silent? These are not just strategies. They are psychic manifestations, and this is where awareness becomes essential. Jung taught us that when we are not aware of the forces that inhabit us, we are taken over by them. The ego loses control. Instinct takes over, and often, when we leave the negotiation, we feel a weight, even though we won. Because self doesn't just measure results, it measures integrity. The body is the field where these archetypes meet. Every gesture conveys who is in command. The confident but not aggressive look reveals the integrated warrior. The stable but receptive posture reveals the conscious king. An authentic smile, even in the face of tension, reveals the healer in action. When there is inner balance, there is no need for domination. Because the power is already integrated, you know what you're worth, and you know you don't have to prove it with every sentence. That kind of confidence is a game changer. You gain control not only of your speech, but of your talk time, an emotion of the environment, other people's perception of you. You dominate, not by shouting, but by presence. And presence, as Jung showed, is the natural consequence of individuation. It is the self occupying the center. So yes, negotiating is a battle, but not against each other. It is against internal fragmentation. Negotiating with awareness is allowing the archetypes within you to talk to each other before your mouth opens. It is to hear the fear of the innocent. It is to control the warrior's impulse. It is accessing the king's strategic vision. And above all, it is to act with the entirety of the self. When this happens, negotiation ceases to be a power game, and it becomes a mirror. A moment when you see, with clarity, not only the value of what is being negotiated, but the value of who you have become. The body never lies. There is a truth that never needed words, a truth that lives between the lines of gestures, in the rhythm of breathing, in the direction of the gaze. A truth that doesn't know how to lie because it never learned to disguise itself. This truth is the body. Along this path, we have seen that it is not just a receptacle of the soul, but its living expression. Every micro gesture reveals a conflict. Each posture reveals a belief. Each breath shortens or expands the space of the self. Carl Jung never said that the body speaks. He said something more profound, that the body is spoken by the unconscious. You can dress your persona in well-cut clothes. You can design speeches, scripts, and facades. But all it takes is a second of silence, an unexpected reaction, and the truth that inhabits your muscles, your eyes, and your hands escapes. It is at this moment that the body reveals who is, in fact, in control. And that's where everything is decided. In the silence between sentences, in the handshake that lasts half a second longer, in hesitation before the answer, in the sudden arching of the back as the shadow threatens to emerge. The body has no filter. He was not trained to please. He doesn't need to be accepted. He just needs to survive. That's why he reveals with surgical precision what the mind spends years trying to hide. And this is the final invitation of this Jungian dive. Relearn to listen to your body, not as something separate from the psyche, but as an oracle, as a mirror, as a sacred territory where the unconscious manifests itself in real time. Jung said that we do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by becoming conscious of darkness. The body is the first place where this darkness appears, and also the first place where it can be welcomed, integrated, and transformed. It's not about deciphering signals as if they were codes. It's about observing with presence, to recognize discomfort, tension, contraction, not as weaknesses, but as messages from the unconscious waiting for translation. The body is the first to know when something is wrong. He is the first to walk away when something is false. He is the first to freeze when faced with a threat. And he's also the first to relax when the truth is told. In the end, what he asks for is not correction. It's listening. Because the body never lies. He just hopes you're ready to hear what he already knows about yourself. And maybe, at this very moment, he is already saying something. Pay attention.